Welcome to the RAMP webinar components. I'm Mark Coranz.
I'm Karen Griffith.
And we're going to share the first component of the RAMP application, which is vision statement. The 12 components of RAMP are scored on different value points. Vision is scored on a scale of 1 to 3, 3 being exemplary. We want to make a disclaimer to make sure that when you're writing and putting together your RAMP application, that you always check the Ask the website to ensure that you're using the most current RAMP rubric. It does sometimes get tweaked and changed, usually not in the middle of a RAMP cycle, but there's no guarantees. So check and make sure you're using the most current RAMP rubric. If the rubric were to change, the principles we're going to talk about today, they're going to be the same. We'd make the same points regardless. And we want to stress a lot in terms of using the rubric to guide your application. Use it as a piece to reflect on how you're doing.
So our first statement is the vision statement. And it is built around the counselor's beliefs about students. You can check the ASCA National Model Implementation Guide, page 13, for more information in general about the vision statement and its pieces. The vision is about what you want for students 5 to 15 years from now, and that's in terms of your work setting. So you're always thinking future, not today, but future. What are your students going to be like in the future? High school counselors are going to think about their students 5 years from today. Elementaries are going to think about their students 15 years from now. What are they like in that time? And all of it's guided by your beliefs about students.
So when you look at beliefs, one of the things you're going to need to be able to share in the narrative is how did your beliefs influence your vision statement. And what we have in this slide is some examples of how you can begin to think through this process and help you capture for the narrative what you did, what you talked about, who you checked with, what was the conversation you had with each other stakeholders, a peer, to create this vision statement, which is really your hope and dreams for your kids, either 5 to 10, 15 years from now.
But read through all of these statements because some of them are about what you believe about students, but it's also about what you believe about your ethics, about data, about how you run your program, about what your role is. This is beliefs about the entire counseling position, duties, responsibilities, experience.
As you develop your belief statements, here are 3 things to help you kind of capture the process. Because in the narrative, you can see at the bottom of the slide, you have to share how the school counseling program's beliefs, influence the vision statement. And you're actually in the narrative going to share your school counseling beliefs. You're going to list them, and you're going to have to be able to talk about how these are important for students, how they guide and drive the program. And what do they do in terms of inspiring you? How does it help you become passionate about helping your students achieve what your hopes and dreams are for them 5 to 10, 15 years from now?
So remember, this is a future statement. This is not about today. This is not about the school counselor. This is not about the school counseling program. This is the future. What is that ultimate outcome you want for your students? If you think of students being your product, that final thing that's produced because of your efforts today, that's what you're trying to describe, that future reality of what students are, become, do, experience, possess. That's what you're trying to frame within this vision statement.
So the vision statement has some very specific criteria that you want to make sure you address. and you can look at the bullet points here, and you know it's about articulating, you know, your hopes and dreams. You want to take the opportunity here to describe in rich detail using flowery language that, you know, really is descriptive and really describes your hopes and your dreams. It's also about articulating that this idea of equitable access. You know, do all kids get access to, you know, the knowledge and skills and attitudes that you provide through a program? And the other piece that I think is really important to note is that you want to make sure your school counseling vision statement aligns with the school's and or district's vision statement. And really the best way to do that is to embed some of the language that you see in the vision of the school or district into your school counseling vision statement. That really communicates that they're aligned. Now, you may not have a vision statement for the district or the school, which is perfectly okay. You just have to make sure you tell that in the narrative. You can't assume that if it's not there, that a reviewer would say, oh, you must not have a vision statement for your school and your district. Make sure you state that.
So this is the rubric for the highest level, the 3 points. And again, it's redundant, but just to emphasize, we're describing the future, where the students have become what you hope they will be, that you were providing a rich and descriptive picture of that so that somebody can really envision what your students will be, and that those are the best possible outcomes that might happen for students. Always focused on the future.
So one of the things I want to help, a really good tip in making sure you do your best is when you look at the rubric, look at the criteria. In this case, there's 3 for vision. But also pay attention to what is described as exemplary. So they'll say, to receive a 3, you have to pay attention to these kinds of things. A 2 is different than a 3, and a 1 obviously is lacking some of those things. Pay attention to both, because you won't always see them say exactly the same thing. But you will be evaluated based on kind of the exemplars you see in the rubric, the exemplar language.
And check the model implementation guide, because there are many examples there that can give you an idea of what this looks like when it's done well. There's some do's and don'ts. There's a comprehensive list on page 14 of the implementation guide. These are some of the main ideas. Again, it's linking to the district and school visions if they exist. If they don't exist, you're stating that very clearly in the narrative. You're focused on the future. You're describing the best possible outcomes, and you're being very descriptive. This is your chance to show all of your writing skills. And then make sure that you are not focused on the school counselor or what the school counselor does. You're not focused on the function of the school counseling program or the reality of the school counseling program. You're focused on the school, the students. You're focused on the future. You are not talking about.
So we've given you an example of a vision statement on the left side of this slide, and on the right side are the 3 criteria that are in the rubric.
Or backwards.
On the left side.
On the left side.
Sorry. So pay attention to what the rubric says, but also check in with the list of descriptors in the exemplary section of the rubric. And it'll play out very clearly here in just a minute. So when I read this vision statement from the Walsh High School Comprehensive School Counseling Program, at the end, I would give it a 2 and not a 3. One of the things I want you to note that's not part of the rubric criteria or will be listed necessarily in the exemplary is this idea of really checking your writing. Because you can see in this example, we start with the Walsh High School, and then all of a sudden we switch to Smith High School. You know, and just a typo and a simple, easy mistake. But again, spelling and punctuation really leave an impression. And so we really want to stress that you want to pay attention to that. That is not why I would give it a 2. I would not give it a 2 or 1 because you mixed up the name of the high school. The reason I would give it a 2 is I think there's 2 things here. The first one is it talks about the Walsh High School School Counseling Program. And it's not about the program. It's about students. And I think that leaves a little bit of a mixed message. The other thing, if you remember in the kind of the exemplary kind of section of the rubric when we showed an earlier slide, it talks about the vision statements needs to address this kind of equitable, the concept of equity, for all students to have access. And I don't see that here. If you say all students, that might communicate equity. And then if that's how you interpret equity, then I think you really need to clearly kind of talk a little bit about how all addresses equity in the narrative.
And I would also give this at best a 2. In addition to what Mark was saying, I would also like to suggest that the second sentence says that the big outcome for them is that they have intentional post-secondary plans. And for me, that's pretty basic expectation. I think when we're looking for best possible outcomes for students, we're looking for more than that. So while this is adequate, it's not exemplary.
The next slide gives you an exemplar vision statement, and what we tried to do with the red highlights is to kind of make the connection between the rubric and the exemplar criteria and the vision statement. So you can see, prepare to compete in a global economy really addresses outcomes for the future. And you can read through this and see that things like the words in terms of describe the future world. We talked about lifelong learners prepared to face the challenges of the 21st century. We used equitable access and use of technology. We used words like a sense of respect for individual rights. So again, it's really trying to describe your hopes and dreams for what your kids, students will be able to kind of live and demonstrate 5, 10, 15 years from now. They're empathetic, they're creative, they're responsible. So again, I want to stress that this is one example of a vision statement. You can go to the National Model Implementation Guide, and there's examples for elementary, there's examples for middle, and there's examples for high school.
The second component of the vision, number 1 section of the application is the narrative. 11 of the 12 sections have narratives, and these matter because this is your opportunity to explain your processes and how you developed what you're submitting. The rubric for the narrative is provided for you verbatim as it stands right now. But I want you to pay attention to how we turned that into 3 points at the bottom for how your paragraph should be developed. You're going to focus in your writing about how the beliefs influence the vision. You've got to cover that. You're going to talk about how the vision statement was developed. This can be as specific as the meetings you had, the conversations you had, who was involved, how was it wordsmithed, and then how that statement emerged as the vision was created and how you tweaked, fixed, edited, adjusted, and finally came up with this perfect vision. Look at the rubric, follow it, use it to guide your writing.
And I think it's really important to note that there are a lot of things that you could tell us about your vision narrative, but you have limited number of words that you can share in the application process, and you must share the story around these 3 points.
Yeah, within that word limit, absolutely.
Pitfalls.
Pitfalls. So these are mistakes that people have made. These tend to happen with lots of applications. So these 4 things tend to be the mistakes that people make. First, they focus on now. They write in the present. They're talking about things that are going on currently in their building or currently what they're doing. They look at what the counselor or the counseling program is doing or providing to students rather than focusing on the students. And there's an absence of alignment of the counseling vision with the school or district. Now, if the school and district doesn't have one, again, you have to state that very clearly in the narrative. Readers only know what you tell them, and you have to tell them they don't exist. If you don't, they're going to wonder why you didn't submit them. Where's the alignment? So give them no reason to mark anything down. State very clearly and explain to your readers all that the rubric asks and why something might be missing.
So this is really a good slide to do some self-checking on your statement. We want to say thank you for joining us for this component of the RAMP application process.
And good luck.